I don't see how they can't say it's a fair thing to bring to the World Court, but who knows what will happen there. More closer to home, Marion recommends that we lobby for the New Zealand government to have a Minister of Disarmament rather than have one or two officials underneath the Minister of Foreign Affairs. That's something we could discuss. It was early on in the John Key government that they decided they wouldn't appoint somebody specifically as Minister of Disarmament. I think that's enough for me now.
Okay. So thanks, Peter. Any of you other guys in Christchurch want to add anything to that before we move on? Anybody in Auckland want to add anything? Or Megs?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing the screen, and I'm going to make this into, okay. So what Marion talked about was the 3 different themes, that everybody's precious, that we need to connect with the goodness in all people, and that we need to walk the talk. And she talked about that on different levels: personal, family, community, workplace, national and international. And Peter's just said something about the national and international area. I'm going to invite folk to think about and maybe to discuss or pop ideas in about how we can help to create a peaceful world by working on the personal, family or community levels, or indeed national or international if we feel so inclined. So I'm going to throw it open and see what happens. So has anybody got something they'd like to chuck into the pool? And what I'll do is I'll go back to going back to the slideshow again, if I can, and I can type things in. If people come up with ideas, I can stick them in, and we can maybe create a document together. So, any thoughts or ideas? What can we do in our personal lives to emphasize that everybody is precious and therefore we shouldn't harm them and certainly shouldn't kill them?
Peaceful home.
Sorry?
A peaceful home.
A peaceful home. Okay, so Brian suggests a peaceful home. What does that mean in practical terms?
In practical terms, I think that it means that the non-shouting, non-confrontational interaction between people.
What we used to say to our kids was we had rules: no hitting, no spitting, no biting, no something else, kicking, I think. And it came out from the kids, and no hitting, no beating, no spitting, no... The other word was terrible, not quick. Began with SH.
Well, could you hear me, Peter? Michael?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, the thing that comes to my mind when I think of personal being precious, I think of self-respect or self-worth. I think might be better. That you have to start from that beginning to start appreciating the value in others.
Okay. Yeah, I think that one of the problems that we see, well, certainly Josephine's working in Aranui, which is a Decile 1 area, a school there, and one of the big problems, both of the kids and the parents, is lack of self-esteem and valuing oneself, and it can be very corrosive. Peter, you were about to say something. I saw you. No, sorry.
The other one for me is to become aware of our personal biases and our personal judgments, because I find myself at times saying, "Oh, that's wrong," or "it's right," and I'm not sure that that's a very helpful analogy, really, or a helpful way of looking at things.
E-I.
I can correct the spelling later.
Okay.
Don't worry about the spelling. That's just, yeah. Google will do that for me anyway. Any other thoughts? Mix, have you got anything to chip in?
I was going to say that there's the wonderful Peter Porter poem about the unknown citizen, and it says, when there was peace, he was for peace, and when there was war, he went. And I think the problem with all of the things like having a peaceful home is that if World War III breaks out, we will be dragged into it whether we like it or not. So I would actually start with the international first and work back down to the peaceful ones, because it's the international ones that are going to sweep us all away, whether we like it or not.
So what do you want to say about the international?
Well, I would really like to get a hold of some influential American talk show and explain to them about mixed member proportional, because their political system is an incredible mess. And we know the Americans are not going to listen to our opinion on that anyway. It gets very depressing when you think, well, you know, if only they would throw away their horrible electoral system and do something much better. If you've got any idea of how to make them do that, I'd like to know.
Does that fit easily into the grid? Or should we put
I think we have to continue to try and work on all of, like we're in the Security Council and so on at the moment, and obviously we do try very hard in that forum to, in fact there's a comment in the listener about how much work we do to try and get the various people in the Security Committee to talk to each other as opposed to shouting at each other. And we have to continue to try and do that somehow, even if we don't seem to be achieving anything very fast.
So helping nations to talk to each other.
Yeah.
What was the motto of the BBC? Nation shall speak peace unto nation.
Mm.
Mm. Rosemary.
I'm not sure that I personally can contribute much except holding them in the light and sending it out into the ether of international negotiations, because I'm not involved in them. But I do think that I should be more supporting, possibly financially, possibly in thought, and possibly doing things like sending cards that I get from Amnesty International to, in fact, to the governments that are holding people in prison. Because that doesn't seem to me, the fact that they're imprisoned isn't making everybody, valuing everybody. And the other reason for doing that is that I have had a friend who's been in prison for her political views, and who said that the support of Amnesty was enormously helpful.
Okay, so that is definitely appreciated by people who are unfortunate enough to be in that situation. Okay.
No, very good.
One of the things Marion said is that people feel powerless to affect what's happening in the world, but she's obviously not pessimistic. She believes that people can join together and have an influence. Amnesty is a very good example of an international NGO, and heaven knows where we'd be in the last 50 years if we hadn't had Amnesty International. There are a whole lot of other NGOs, many have sprung up in the last 30 years, that are somehow working beyond the national barriers. And you never know what success they're going to have. But some have, for example, worked on disarmament, things like the amazing landmine coalition that achieved an international treaty in about 5 years.
Yes.
So that was started by ordinary people, actually, not unlike us.
Cool, thank you. Mount Eden, how are you doing there?
Well, I would propose, I think you're working on that bottom line, and the middle cell, connected with goodness. the most, shall we say, non-influential way to connect is to stay informed, and then passing on what you can to others, and then simply by being informed, you know what the situations are, and you're perhaps less likely to be despondent or feeling helpless. You at least know what's happening.
Does that capture what you're saying?
Yes. Hope is not necessarily going to come from the information, but at least you won't be worried about the unknown.
Having the orientation of sharing the information. Yeah?
You were asking a question, Michael?
Yes. Is that
the question was?
Is that what you're saying? Having the sharing information, and out of that can come hope together, different things.
Yes. I mean, I think you'll appreciate that sometimes when you stay informed, you feel more hopeless, but at least you won't be fearing the unknown. You'll have some idea.
Yeah.
I wonder if the other aspect of staying informed is also knowing a bit of facts. And I'm thinking particularly of the American situation at the moment and the Brexit campaign, when misinformation was bandied about by everybody and believed.
Yes.
And people responded to the misinformation and fiction, not facts.
Mm. Cool. Okay. We've got a nice little group of items along the bottom. We've filled in the bottom row pretty well. And we've got a nice desert area to the north and east of that. Ideas for things that we could put in those areas.
There are some friends out this evening helping to, participating in some decision making around the Navy's 75th anniversary week and the arms fair that will accompany that, trying to sort out the best way that protest can happen. So that's a national action. And of course, it's, lately there has been opportunities around the centenary of the First World War as well, where we've been able to share alternative views.
Speaking as a Kiwi, I don't think people realise how easy it is to contact elected representatives. In this country, it's much easier than in most. 10 days ago, I sent an email to my MP saying, could I meet to talk about something? And I got an appointment very quickly. The lobbying is one thing we can do on the national level. Some of us participate in political parties. Some of us even stand for election in local bodies. But we shouldn't feel powerless in these areas. Though, of course, people can't do much. It's more groups and associations can do things.
But groups are made up of individuals. If you don't have individuals who do stuff, you don't get a group, do you? I'm thinking about workplaces and communities, and I'm thinking about situations in workplaces where things like workplace bullying and so on goes on. And I think one of the things there that one can do in that situation is actually be prepared to speak up against you know, when one sees workplace bullying. So I'm going to put that in if that's okay with the rest of you.
Marion's lecture talks briefly about hate speech, and I suppose sexist and racist speech will often come in there. What I would like to hear is better cues about actually what to say and how to challenge it.
And I would like to put in everybody precious in the first square there.
Up here or?
To support the living wage.
Oh, here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is actually, it's really difficult to do, is to make people aware of and where possible boycott buying things that are probably sweated labels, slave labour.
And it is.
Michael, you expressed some interest there in workplace bullying. I don't know whether you've heard of the organisation called Culture Safe, but you might like to have a look at it later on.
Okay, thank you. How are we doing? Can we just have a stop and see how's this going for people?
I'd like to welcome Gray Southern. I can see on the
Oh, hi, Gray. Welcome. Where are you?
tower.
Tauranga. Yeah, you did say you'd be on.
Yeah,
What you should be doing, we're going through Marion's 3 themes and 5 levels and trying to fill stuff in. So if you've got anything you'd like to contribute as to what we've done so far, that would be great.
okay, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Your microphone level seems a little low. I'm not sure whether you can turn up your mic level or not.
I will try. I'm just.
Okay, I see you're obviously well trained. You've got a headset on, which is great.
I will talk loud.
Okay, all right, jolly good. Okay.
Me again?
Yes, me. Go on, Migs.
And I'm back to the fact that a lot of it is top down rather than bottom up, because having said that we've got a good political system, or better than when we had first past the post, we still have a national government that will do things like decommissioning state houses because they've got holes in the floor, but not actually considering what you're going to do in the meantime. And the whole feedback mechanism of saying to politicians, this is not good enough, seems to be not terribly efficient at the moment.
So what are you saying? Where does that fit in?
Well, if everyone is precious, then things like a housing policy that does more than give lip service to the idea that people shouldn't be sleeping in their cars. And I actually have off-the-wall fantasies in which every Samoan minister announces from the pulpit that he'd like all the parishioners who are paying too much rent to give notice and come and park in the church car park and live in the church buildings for a few months until the landlords drop the prices. But unfortunately, everyone seems to put this into the too hard basket and it just rolls on.
Yeah. Yes. The whole inequality thing is really, and the attitude of the current government, very difficult to see the way forward, I think.
It's Brian here. I don't think our current government is seeing that everyone is precious. It's seeing who the different people who can gain from the system. But I certainly agree with that. So yeah, just because we've got an MMP parliament doesn't in fact assist in the yeah.
I
Right.
would like, hello? Can you
Yeah.
hear me? I would like to make a comment which I feel is many peace policies are weak on, and that is recognizing everybody's need for a sense of security. And this is it's this issue which justifies much of the investment in armaments. Now, there are a lot of factors which drive armaments, but politically, it is because people feel that there is a need for them. And this is demonstrated right now when Jeremy Corbyn has had to back off from his lifeline commitment to nuclear disarmament because of the very strong feeling within the Labour Party that their political survival depends on supporting it. So, you know, there's some really difficult, I don't understand what's happening there, but there's something which is not covered by all the rationale of the horrors and the stupidities and the waste of the nuclear arms industry.
Yes. Peter, do you want to say something to that?
Well, since you asked me, I've been thinking, people think that arms, and nuclear arms in particular, help to make them secure, but very few people have any sense of how many near misses, how many accidents, how many stuff-ups, how many dangers there have been over the last 70 years of nuclear arms. I think New Zealanders know more than most, particularly about the dangers of testing. And this is one way of undermining their equation of nukes with security.
The other component seems to me to be one of I can only say greed, in that America is sending billions of dollars of arms to Saudi Arabia. Why? Unless they don't, I don't know that is that security. Is it greed because it's a very money-making hobby? And I think the British are not far off. And I would like to, and again, if we go back to how many facts do we have? Are we aware? I'm delighted that it was Amnesty that started looking at where we were putting our investments. And were we putting, we being Kiwis at this moment, putting our investment into weapons making?
The idiocy of the situation was highlighted by a study I had, U3A study of on the role of the military globally, and doing analysis of what countries are highest expenditure on armaments. They are nearly all friends.
Yes.
Allies.
Friends.
It can make an exception of Russia, and half an exception of China, but the rest are all friends of each other.
Well, it's the capitalist.
Who are they protecting themselves from?
It's the capitalist system, isn't it? I mean, people in wartime, capitalists make a lot of money.
Well, yeah, but what justifies the politics? What justifies people putting money, approving? Why do people approve of government spending that money when they could be spending on lots of other things?
Yeah.
In fact, I heard just recently that the company that got the greatest result from World War II was the Rockefellers. They were arming everybody.
Yes.
You know, so it's not necessarily governments.
I think we might have got somebody else joining us.
Jennifer,
Somebody.
Jennifer.
Can you hear us?
I think people can join in via Skype. I think that's what's happened with that one.
I can't see.
No.
I think it was a Skype notice.
On my computer was there? Did it come up?
Yes.
Yeah,
It was Skype does that.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with this session.
That's right.
So don't worry. I didn't notice that. Okay. How are we doing, folks? Have we explored this?
Could I just go back before we move on
Yes.
to the personal and connected troubles? I'm having personal troubles at the moment with Mr. Trump because I find myself being so unpeaceful about him and getting angry with him and despairing. And the other part of me says that in fact, in doing so, I'm actually giving him power. Mm-hmm. And I think that I'll remember sitting in a workshop with Adam Curl, and he talked about owning our own cowpats and not putting them on everybody else. And I thought that was a lovely analogy. And I personally think it's rather important that I change my attitude to such people as Donald Trump. Because I don't think I'm very peaceful about it.
It's hard, isn't it?
Well, is it possible to recognise him as a tolerable human being and not as a tolerable candidate for office? That might be almost possible. Some say he can be charming.
Deafening silence.
But you see, Hitler was extremely charming. It's one of the things that goes with the job. Hitler on a personal level was apparently lovely.
And he loved his dog.
I think there are grounds for some agitation. It's a question of can that be channeled into a constructive next step, being agitated, rather than a destructive or useless type of agitation. Now, under the heading of national contact with goodness, I'm led to think about the aligning ourselves with other bodies. Rosemary has mentioned Amnesty a couple of times, and there are so many other bodies, organisations working with whom we can align ourselves.
I think that's important because there are lots of other organisations and we are relatively few in number. And I think if we offer support where the spirit draws us, I think that's really important.
I was very impressed at yearly meeting with the video on a model for dealing with family interactions in the Samoan community, which could be used for all communities. And I think that I'm so aware that many people just in family situations just don't have any other models other than violence. And I would like to bring that video to lots of people.
In reference to that, there's the AVP program, which has got a lot of success, but moreover, at the international level, or perhaps national, there's the non-violent movement, which is a long-standing movement, receiving limited recognition until very recently. The Dunedin Centre has been doing a lot of study on this, but it demonstrates the ability of people, ordinary citizens, defeating very violent oppression without use of violence. And there are a lot of examples of this. But it's not easy. It needs careful study. It needs expertise.
Gray, there's a difference between the non-violent movement and AVP? Query?
I'm sorry, I can only just hear you.
Is there a difference between the non-violent movement and AVP?
Oh, yes, indeed, there is. I mean, there's commonalities, but AVP is very much a personal thing. This is mass civic action.
Yes.
We're talking about what's happened in the Philippines when Marcos was deposed. What happened in Iran when the Shah was deposed. Whole people will rise up non-violently and depose, and it's happened in a lot of different places.
Well, India for a start.
Gandhi.
Yeah, with Gandhi.
Gandhi, yes, it happened in South Africa, it happened in Poland, Myanmar. There's actually a lot on the internet. Palestine, Central America, Guatemala, just a year or so ago, deposed its president non-violently.
How about if we got this information, this chart that we're putting together now, how about if we circulated that and maybe made a website or a blog or something where people can add resources or add information to, so that resource for people?
Yeah.
Would that work?
Do you mean like a shared document on Facebook or something like that?
On Facebook, but for friends to use as a resource.
Yeah.
Are we practical enough on that?
I don't know.
Some people are, Rosemary.
Sorry?
Some people are.
No,
Yeah.
using that is that
Yes.
enough?
That's thinking at the moment. We haven't yet got the actual nuts and bolts, but I imagine that could come out of it. I mean, I don't know what one's expectations are of where we're going tonight.
We haven't really spoken about actions, except the one down there about the anniversary of the Navy coming up, and I suggest that as that comes to light, more information will come forward. But yes,
Should we start another slide and call it actions?
well, I don't know that I feel the strength for that, but some people might feel led. Yes.
I would think that might be very valuable. Going back to Marion Hobbs's point, that it was the collection and the work of groups and communities that brought about so much change. And I'm sure that there are individuals who've done this, and there was a woman who changed the smoking packaging, who was an individual who did the most enormous amount of work, produced changes. But basically, I think that I would feel more
So, do you want a slide that is about actions?
Yes.
Or, yes, you do. Okay.
Possible actions, not that we have to, but ideas for action.
Okay, I'll do that.
One of the things that I sometimes see and realise that there are parallels is when I look at the British Quakers and their concern around school visits by the military. And I realise that there are some parallels here in New Zealand where we need to be at least monitoring school visits by the military and countering it, giving it some balance.
I think we should be linking in with the Peace Foundation's new program for schools.
That's interesting.
It's not a new program, it's an enhancement of their program.
In Christchurch, we voted some money to their Give a Letter campaign, and we when we had Marion's lecture, the koha that we collected is going towards that campaign too.
Good.
At the end of Marion's booklet, she has a list of about 9 different ideas for action, very speculative, some of them, but there are a lot of things we could focus on. And she says, starts off with, where is Minister for Disarmament? Well, I don't know whether the Labour Party is interested, if they come into power, of reappointing, reinventing that position, but a little bit of lobbying might help on that. Another thing she mentions is community mediation. That's an area we didn't look at in those cells before, but there's a lot of work that Quakers and others have done about peaceful dispute resolution, and even something as precise as the Christchurch community justice panels, which are a community alternative to the normal criminal justice system.
And that's interesting because the police are pro-it, those. It's Roger Kemp's, I was going to say Roger Kemp's baby, but you know what I mean. And the police support this, but the government say no. And I wonder if we should be lobbying DOC at the moment, because I'm horrified that the Forest and Bird have taken DOC and the Minister of Conservation to court over the deregistration of bits of land which were conservation areas. I think it's the Ruataniwha Dam.
Yeah, that is.
So can you explain where that links in with our theme right now?
Well, we support Forest and Bird to maintain areas of conservation.
Yeah.
And I think they may need, and I don't know whether we support Forest and Bird or we lobby DOC.
Lobby DOC.
I don't feel it's directly related to peace in some ways.
No, it's not related.
It could lead to feelings of discontent, but I'm not sure that it's so closely related to peace.
They did also win. I mean, they were going to do a land swap and they were told they couldn't do a land swap, which I assume we approve of.
Yes, but they're taking it to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And they're also lodging a request to have the power to requisition the land, so that might get processed in their favour.
It was an interesting comment that wasn't peaceful. I wonder, I sometimes think that peace is not just anti-war or anti-armaments. It's also about respect, and respect for the land, respect for people.
One thing that I have, in my past, I used to work in a pharmaceutical company. And one of the things that we were involved in was experiments on living animals. And I got to a stage where I felt that a lot of the scientific approach, the analytical approach, was essentially non-peaceful. It was aggressive and violent. That led me ultimately to leave that employment. What was very interesting, however, after that was that when I was at various sorts of fairs and things, and they had a stand of the Anti-Vivisection Society, and I got talking to them, they assumed that because I had stopped doing that work, that I was totally pro their point of view. But it's very difficult because I had colleagues who were still working in that area, and from their own truth, that was their way of service. And that can get quite unpeaceful too, when people who are on the other side, sort of, it's a mind thing. I'm not expressing that very well, but maybe you can get the gist.
Hang on. It's not unpeaceful if you have a disagreement of opinions. It only becomes unpeaceful when you start throwing insults and heavier objects in that direction. It's normal to have differences of opinion, isn't it? The question is how you cope with it.
It was how it's done too.
Yes.
Both sides. It is tango, isn't it?
Yes, it's very much how it's done. The word can really cut hard.
Yes. Any more ideas for action?
I was going to say that the fact that we have now been told we can go ahead and start letting community groups into our new rooms, providing a place for people to meet. They may be ostensibly there to do yoga, but they will also talk about things like bullying in schools or whatever it may be. And just by having a building that is used by groups of people, we are making an action.
How are we doing, folks? We've been going for about 50 minutes. I'm getting the sense myself that it may be time to sort of start drawing this to a close.
You have to show everyone the carpet you promised.
Just a moment. Rowan's got an idea here.
Hello.
How's everybody doing?
I beg your pardon. Okay. Having been a teacher both in primary and secondary, with military going into primary schools is one thing, but I doubt that they would have a very comfortable time if they went into secondary schools. And I am proposing that they do go into secondary schools. Primary schools are safer, but secondary schools is where the challenge is.
Sorry, who was that?
Rowena.
Hi, Rowena. Thank you.
I would imagine that the teachers in the primary schools would be most uncomfortable.
Speak up, please.
Many of them would be uncomfortable. I think we should touch base with primary school, with teachers at the various levels, and ask them what they think of the role of the military in this.
I think it depends on the secondary school. I went to a very traditional English grammar school, and we had the cadet forces there, and there was quite a lot of, and I was a member, I mean, of that, you know, before my Quaker days. But there's quite a lot of sort of propaganda to support the military, especially in a country like Britain, you know. So I'm not sure whether they would get short shrift in most secondary schools.
I was going to ask you, Rowena, whether that's changed, because when I was at school in England, certainly many of the boys' schools, particularly the public schools, had a very faithful cadet situation, which was very much part of the belief system of the school. And I wondered if that's changed. I feel elderly on this one.
I'm more elderly than you.
What did you say?
Are we going to have a more elderly competition?
I think what we need to do is inform ourselves first about the scale of the issue, and then decide how to act.
One of the features of Marion's talk, especially the opening pages, were quotations from Quaker documents of the past. I think one of the more profound ones on page 5, she quotes this with underlining, that we need to purge the seeds of war, pride, prestige, and lust for power and possessions. Those are indeed the seeds of violence and unpeace. And maybe the best we can do is somehow walk the talk and model a sort of way of living that doesn't include power, prestige, and lust for possessions. It's a cultural thing.
That, of course, is important, but it's also very important to be in touch with what other forces in the society are changing attitudes in the other direction. And we're talking about the influence of the military in the schools. I think also important is the attitudes in our diplomatic areas. And I'm a member of the New Zealand Institute of International Affairs, which produces a regular magazine discussing international affairs from the New Zealand's perspective, usually. It has a variety of opinions, but some of them are very militaristic. And I, at times, have written a considerable number of letters addressing these issues. And this is, I think, one of the things we need to go along to the military reviews. How many of us went to military reviews consultations? I went to a couple, and I was amazed actually that the public were considerably more militaristic in their aggressive in their attitudes than the military were themselves.
how are we doing? I'm getting a feeling of drawing this to a close. Do we feel that that is appropriate?
I think I personally think that's appropriate. My tongue is hanging out for some liquid. But I'd also like to just take the opportunity to thank Michael for getting this going. So I was just saying to Peter, it's so much easier than Skype.
It's different.
It's different.
It's very different, and I think very much more worthwhile. It might be difficult to set up, and that's.
No, it's not that difficult.
So thank you, Michael, and may this continue in other ways.
Thank you. Someone else was about to say something.
Yes.
How is the carpet?
Yeah, all right, about the carpet. I'll pick up the camera and show you the carpet in a second. I just request you guys who are away from Christchurch, and you Meeks who's at home, if you've got any feedback about how this was and what the potential you see for this type of use of the technology, please flick me an email to that email address, chichaQclark@gmail.com. I happen to be the clerk for the moment of this meeting, and that's the clerk's email address. And I'd just like to thank you very much for taking part. And I think it's appropriate as friends, maybe if we finish with a moment of silence before I show you around with the camera. So I invite you to a moment of silence.
Thank you.
I think it's Weeks' carpet.
Okay, hang on. Let me just stop the. I've been recording this just in case there's anything of any use. So I'll just stop the share and stop the recording. Okay.